Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all sexualities, identities, and more, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is a double whammy. It's a Torchwood and Torchwood Aliens Among Us 1 and 2. So, without further ado, let's not beat around the bush any longer, and let's get right into these two box sets. Series 5, Episode 1 starts with Everything Changes. We start off with a disgraced journalist by the name of Tyler Steele. And Tyler Steele decides to go snooping his nose exactly where it's not needed. And it ends up landing him in a lot of trouble with Torchwood. Tyler's opening story, you might as well say, is very similar to the very first story with Gwen Cooper. He begins to investigate into something and Torchwood just so happens to be on the scene. Later down the line, Tyler tries to blame his sexuality as the reason why Mr. Colchester doesn't like him. Turns out Mr. Colchester just really doesn't like journalists. He finds them very snoopy and believes that they should keep to their own business. So it turns out on a hookup, Tyler ends up getting involved with Captain Jack. Not to be surprised to anyone who knows the story of Torchwood, but this isn't the first time Jack has got very intimate with people he decides to bring on the force. The second story in the box set, Sex, Aliens, Chips and Gravy, is a story in which Mr. Colchester and Gwen Cooper go undercover. They begin to look into the alien life that's among them in Cardiff, all because of the fact of an upcoming wedding between two royals. Turns out, though, there's a little more to play on than just a casual wedding, and Mr. Colchester and Gwen find themselves in the presence of 2 or 3 ladies who decide to go a bit rogue. But that's not all, and it turns out that it's all being done for money. When one of the aliens tries to back out, she worries because of the Queen Mother and her assassins, so she decides to cower and decides to stick to her roots. The third story in this anthology, Or, is about a character who I've got to say I absolutely love in this Torchwood franchise, in this new era. Or is a kind of transvestite shapeshifter who can change their appearance depending on people's sexual preferences. When Or is discovered by Torchwood, it turns out that they've been given a detonation device. This detonation device, if it goes off, will destroy them, and in turn cause a very big explosion in Torchwood. With the help of Mr. Colchester, Or manages to escape the device, and rather than going back to living a life of unrest under the people who did it to Or, they decide to join Torchwood and try and help them save the Earth from alien threats. The final story in the first box set is Superiority Complex. This story is about an alien hotel built in the central hub of Cardiff, only to turn out that the hotel will not be letting any humans live inside. But to make matters worse for the residents trying to stay at the hotel, it turns out that someone's been going around murdering them all. It's Torchwood's task to stop the murderer and hopefully try and figure out a way to coexist. Now, the second box set, of course, Aliens Among Us 2, is a very interesting and more defined box set. First story in this box set is called Love Rat. Turns out that Jack and his libido seem to have been attacked by an alien presence which seems to feed on each host, giving them a kind of infectious disease which would spread among human beings and cause them to act very irrational. Hence Jack accidentally sleeping with Gwen. Well, at least who he believes to be Gwen. We'll come to that down the line. This alien parasite kind of being overly horny makes it very hard for Or to be around them. But eventually, once Or realises exactly what the problem is, they help subdue the problem and save Jack, Gwen, and anyone else who's come into contact with Captain Jack's endless desire for sex. Second story, which is called A View to Kill For, follows the story of Mr. Colchester and his husband. Mr. Colchester and his husband have moved into an apartment block in hopes of getting away from all the chaos going on in Cardiff. Mrs. Colchester, fearing for his Muslim husband, doesn't want him to get caught up in anything on the street, and so, to help his husband out, he has brought him into what he believed to be a safe living environment, only to realise that soon enough, the hotel that they have moved into / apartment block is owned by Billis' manager. Now, Billis, for anyone who didn't watch the TV show, is kind of a manipulative god type. It's never fully explained where Billis came from, but all we know is he has a way of pretty much interfering in history. Last time we bumped into Billis, he was pretty much trying to bring a god from the pantheon into the real world and destroy all of Earth. In this story, however, he seems to be thriving on the rush and determination of people who will do anything for what they want. And so he inspires a bunch of neighbours to move into an apartment block and keep having dinner parties to kill off their competition. Mr. Colchester and his husband, unwittingly meaning to get crossed into the crossfire, find themselves getting annoyed about all the parties. When they decide to turn all of them down, though, however, they eventually get crossed up with the wrong pair. They agree to one party, and it turns out that they're the last people in the apartment block looking for the best view. In order to win the competition, they must stop them from being killed. Mr. Colchester points out the fact that he just wants to stay in the block, he just wants to protect his husband, but Billis is not falling for it. Billis will absolutely get him to do anything in order to win his little contest. Mr. Colchester loses it and decides to take out both the women who have been trying to attack his husband. In doing so, he accidentally gives in to Billis's demand, causing the whole events to go exactly how Billis wanted it in the first place. And now, after doing this, he accidentally opens the rift, allowing whatever was on the other side to come through. Next story is 0 Hours. Now, have you ever had a job where you feel like it never ends? Well, Tyler is about to find that out for himself. Tyler Spear goes on an investigation after finding out about all the reduced unemployment. Little does he realise, though, the 0-hour contracts they're on means that they can work all day and all night without having to have a break. Whilst trying to find a way to shut down the operation, he finds himself caught in the crossfire. He falls in love with a guy who pretty much was doing the job before him and begins to get very suspicious after realising that every time that you don't keep up the shift, you seem to be piling sand into boxes. Turns out by the end of it, he finds out that the guy he really loved had been turned into sand and that everyone was being brainwashed by their phones. That's why the work was so easy to get and why it was so easy never to stop. Last story in this box set is The Empty Hand. Turns out Sergeant Andy Davidson has been framed. But has he fully been framed, or has he just given in to his true desires and true thoughts on migration? Well, that's exactly what Torchwood wants to find out, and when Gwen Cooper goes looking, she finds herself in a bit of a pickle. She can't quite find any facts to lead to the fact that Andy is a sane person, but she doesn't believe for a second that he would do any of these things that he has been said to have done. No matter how clear the footage seems to show him shooting a migrant, it turns out that, in fact, it wasn't any of his own doing. Turns out that the Sorviks had been using a scientist to use some kind of element that is here yet not here in order to brainwash him into being able to commit these crimes. The way they tricked him into doing this was by taking him to a seminar in which he was going to be educated on racism. The irony in this is the fact that he doesn't realise what he's about to do is going to cause a riot. After removing this device that Andy has been begging and complaining about in his hand, they go to confront the mayor and hope that they can deliver the statement to the people. After approaching the mayor, Gwen is caught off guard when Jack turns up, arguing with her about the principles of this matter and the lack of information that she has on everything that's going on in Cardiff. At the end of the episode, we have a massive argument between Jack and his group, and as it seems like they may go on to have a coup, it turns out that Hartman, who is thought to be dead, has appeared back in the Torchwood base and is now challenging Jack on whether or not she should be in charge. So, what did I think of these first two box sets so far? Well, I love the braveness of these stories. I absolutely, as I've already said, love Or. Junio Dawson's script for that story was brilliant, and I will never not love it. I feel like as Jack progresses in these box sets, though, I'm really starting to love the way that he's kind of being tested. I always felt that on screen Jack gets tested, but it's really nice to see that since the group dynamic is no longer Yanto, Owen, Tosh, it's really clear to see that since we've now got Mr. Colchester, Gwen, Tyler, and Orr, they are all completely different characters. They all have completely different motives for why they're in Torchwood, and they have completely different outlooks on how situations should be handled. This is really tested by the end of box set 2, on the factor of like what I said a second ago. He is kind of saying he's in charge, and there's Mr. Colchester and everyone now kind of saying, "Are you?" Orr's constant playing on people's sexualities and identities and the way that people express themselves, I think, is really well carried around in both box sets, especially relating to my own life and the way I've talked to people. I mean, even recently when I went to a drag show the other day, I like that we all kind of had this grown-up conversation about who we are, and I like that Orr is kind of the odd sheep of the family in this, and she's just trying to adapt and trying to express to people that she doesn't see things, or they don't see things the same way as other people do. Andy Davidson is quite funny as always. I really like, though, in The Empty Hand, how he's testing his own morals. He's very upset in the story about the fact that he doesn't know who he shot, and at least that shows his human side, because often people in authority are shown in many TV shows to be very direct, very emotionless. So to really see the humanity of this police officer shown in this box set, or in these box sets, I should say, is a really, really good, strong start. Mr. Colchester, one of my favourite characters in both of these box sets. I absolutely love how he does not take no crap. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. He doesn't take any crap. He doesn't beat around the bush. And he absolutely sells it to the audience when he's having these conversations with people. He's like the kind of grown-up grandfather slash father of the group. Fair enough, Jack is older than he looks, but even with Captain Jack, Mr. Colchester knows when he's going to call him out. Tyler, the journalist. He's silly, he's funny, and sometimes he's just a little bit too cheeky for his own good. I really liked in box set 1 how Tyler is portrayed to be this kind of outcast Torchwood, but he's also someone who's really needy and wants to work for them. I also like, though, how when it's carried over to box set 2, he kind of becomes the worm of the family. In the sense that essentially Tyler is still trusted heavily by Gwen, but he's not really trusted by the rest of the group. Mainly not just because of him being a journalist or anything like that, but because they don't know where his loyalties stay between him and the mayor. The return of Billis in the second box set really, really hyped me up on this trilogy that's going on at the moment. I really like the idea that Billis is going to pop up at points in these stories and kind of wreak havoc on the world. I also like that Reese gets a really good setup in these box sets. I feel like the one thing that annoyed me when I used to watch him on TV is I very much felt like he was put to the sideline. I like that in these he's kind of an action man and kind of the the dad who's there when he needs to be. I also just like as a whole how Cardiff has now become a little bit more complicated in these box sets. It kind of felt before when you watched Cardiff on the TV show that Cardiff was just kind of the setting. Now it really feels like Cardiff isn't just the setting, but it's really starting to pull its strings in these box sets and really starting to be affected. And it's affecting our characters, it's affecting itself, and most importantly, with each and every single one of these stories, it's really starting to push this narrative about our own world and how our lives are affected by change. And for that reason, I give both box sets of Aliens Among Us a solid 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next Doctor Who review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, and Alon Z, you beautiful Whovians.